Okay, so moving on to the fulcrum, or the part that the boom swings around. This part in particular, or this assembly in particular, needs to be particularly strong, which is why most of these parts are labelled as 100% fill. I wouldn't advise skimping too much on that information. I tried this at much less fill, this part here for example, and it's split around there. So it's now 100% fill for me. I won't trust anything less on it. So this is part number 16100, and it's the base of our fulcrum, the part that actually attaches to the tripod. So if we turn it over, we can see that there's a hole here. And that hole is for, we have an M5 low profile bolt which works as an axle, which drops down through that hole like that. Now you'll notice that this hole will probably have support material in it because you'll have printed it in like that. Make sure you dig out all the support material that should be in that hole, such that it allows your M5 bolt to sit down lower than the next piece that's going to go in, which is our 3/8 by 5/8 screw adapter. Now we need that to be flush with the top of there, so it's important that the head of this goes lower than the base of this, okay? So simply take that, and that should just drop in there without too much effort and pull down and be below. Now to get this into the plastic here, we use the heat method, and for that I'm using a small kitchen blowtorch such as this one and a pair of pliers. Now with a lot of plastics inserts you can get away quite easily with using a soldering iron, but these things are quite chunky and it would take a long time for a soldering iron to heat that up. So I'm using this kitchen torch. You also want to have handy a damp sponge, which allows you to cool the part off once it's finished melting through and into the plastic, so you can stop that process from carrying on. So if we take a look at our part now, what I'm going to do is turn on my torch. Now you don't want this to be red hot. Remember, the melting temperature of your PLA is only, 200 or less, 180 degrees. So what I normally do is, I have a bit of scrap plastic, and I'm sure you'll have plenty of this lying around, so when I think it's hot enough, I just test it on a bit of scrap. It's melting. See how quickly it's melting into that. When I'm happy it's going to go all the way, I drop that into the hole, like so. And allow that to go down, all the way down, and when it just gets to the end like that, I'll just turn it over on the desk and push it all the way. Turn it on the desk, push it all the way. The pliers are hot. And that's my piece absolutely flush in there. Take the cold cloth and just cool that off so that it won't go any further. Turn that off. Yeah, remember the pliers get hot also. So with that properly home in here and all nice and tidy, take a small 8mm by 3mm magnet in the small slot here, just drop that magnet in there. Now you may find it's a tight fit, in which case you can just press it in. In any case, I like to super glue it, so I'll just drop a little super glue into the slot here, like so, and then just drop my magnet in behind it. And what that's going to do is act as a keeper, that magnet, for another 30mm long low profile bolt, which is going to go into the side there and be held by that magnet, and that allows us to tighten the whole assembly onto the tripods or any other mount. Then we can take this part here, which can be printed, you probably get away with a 80% fill on this one, which would save you a little bit of time, but still has to be pretty dense as a part. Okay, so time traveling back from a later point in the build, I forgot to put in at this stage this little M5 8mm long threaded insert. Now this insert receives this adjustable wing bolt here, which goes into the side of the base of the fulcrum and locks the fulcrum for us. But it won't work unless you have this threaded insert on the inside, because the plastic just can't cope with the pressure. So the way to do that is I've taken a short M5 bolt and I'm just going to run that on there a couple of turns, and I'm going to use my torch here. I'm going to heat that up, and then I'm going to press it in on the back into that small square pocket, the other side of where that bolt goes through on here. Okay, so I'm just going to do that just now. Wait. I do have a cold cloth ready. Squeeze some water in there after I've done this. You don't have to heat these for too long. The brass gets hot very fast. Turn that off. You may or may not be able to see this. So that goes in there. And we push that all the way to the back of that space. And once it's in, we can just unthread the bolt. Some water in there. Just to cool that part off. Okay, so one thing you may find you have to do is continue to drive, after it's cooled down, continue to drive this screw here through this part and out the other side, because as you press the plastic, the threaded insert in there, it might block the hole on the other side with the plastic that it pushes forward. That's what happened to me, and I had to drive the small bolt through continuously through and out the other side before this one would go through and make contact with the insert. Okay, I'll leave you with the other guy in the present time. And with that, we need two bearings. Now we have a 30 by 42 by 7 bearing, which presses into the top of here, like so. And our larger bearing goes into the base, and this is a 2RS 55 by 72 by 9 bearing, and it's the same large bearing I use on the pan tilt heads. So this one goes in here like so and snaps in. Okay, the next thing to do is find parts 18 and 19. And these are our side supports, and the orientation of these is quite important. Now one of those supports has a hex on it here, and if you look at this part, this is where we're going to have a screw locking mechanism on the end. So if that's facing away from you, the hex part is going to go on the left hand side, this side, okay, with the hex, the placement for the hex screw facing out the way. So that drops in there like that. And the other side is going to go in the same orientation, bending back like so. Okay, so it's important the hex is on this side and the planar one is on this side, and they both bend towards the back or the screw position, which is going to go in here. So those are fixed in place using 4 M5 50mm long low profile bolts, and they go through these holes here in the bottom, and these have to go in first before anything else goes together. So this one goes in like so. That should drop down. and we can screw it in place. So there we go. That's those fixed in place to the 4 bolts. So now, at last, we can take, well, before we go further, then if you print off part 17100, it actually consists of 2 parts. This little cap here, first of all with this, take an M5 nut and just press it into the hex on this side. And this piece here, this little block of plastic with the teeth in it, this is designed to engage with the teeth on this part here, which basically locks thing from turning. So what we have to do first of all is, you'll find that if you look at the base of this, there's a cavity here, okay, next to where the screw hole is. And this little block just goes in here and runs back between the 2 bearings. Okay, so with that little block in there, now we can take this part here, and that should just go down and in between the 2 bearings, like so. And we can take our little cap with our M5 nut in the end of it, and that should just screw onto the top of here. Okay, like so. And all it remains for us to do now is take our 17mm long M5 adjustable wing nut, and the small hole in the side here, we can just screw that in and let the bolt itself actually tap the plastic. I've had this in before, so it's going in much easier. Now, as this bolt goes in, it's going to push that small plastic toothed block in towards the cog in the center and lock. So at the moment this is turning freely, okay? But as we lock this off, the base is now locked in place and won't turn separate from the top. Slacken it off, and we can now turn the base separate from the top, like so. And last but not least, remember the little magnet we put in here? We take our 30mm bolt, low profile bolt, and that just drops into this hole on the side of the orange part here, and it's held in place by the magnet, okay? And the idea is that with this slackened off, as you pull that out slightly, it gives you something to use as a means of tightening this onto the base of the tripod. Moving on, we're now going to start assembling the hinge part of the fulcrum. Now, probably best to start by finding this knob, part 2360, and if you'll also find you need a 100mm long hex head, that style there, and basically run that hex head. There are 2 of these knobs. One is for an M8 bolt, and the other is for the M6 bolt. Now take the M6 one, run it through here. It's 100mm long, and just have that ready for the next step. Now originally I modelled these to be printed as one piece. Unfortunately, the support material causes the inside faces of these to be very rough, and you're only getting about 50% of the friction you should be inside the joint. So I've gotten rid of that idea, and now we're printing this as 5 parts. Now it takes the same length of time to print, but it produces a much neater job that works more effectively. So these are the 5 components required. And what we have to have ready is a 50mm low profile bolt to go in through the side, and some super glue, okay? And we're going to use this as well to help keep things aligned as we work. So if you look at those parts, the 2 with double holes in here are for the ends. you'll notice the other ones only have a single hole through the middle, like so. So they go in the middle like that, and the two ends come on. One of these has a pocket in it for the head of the bolt that's going to go through. So I'm going to put these together like so, and I'm just going to take my M6 screw and I'm just going to use that as a guide for these and run them onto here. Okay, and they'll all line up like that. Okay, so now we take our M5 low profile bolt, that goes into the side of here, and we'll just screw that up until we see it just about pop through the end of the first part. Takes a bit, there we go, it's just flush with the top of the first part. And what I'm going to do now is put some super glue around that face. Making sure not to let it go into the joint there. Turn it around until it aligns. That's not good. There we go. Like so. And then I'm just going to run that bolt on to the next one, so I can feel it come through at the other side. There we go. Add some super glue onto this one. Give some room to that. Okay, bring this one up. Hold it together there. And drive my bolt through again. So I can just feel it. Onto the last one. Put some super glue around here. Bring it together. And there we go. That's perfectly aligned. Clear up any mess I've made. So okay, before you try and glue this piece on and it goes on this way, you notice it's chamfered on three sides. The chamfer goes away from the curves. The flat side here is up beside the hinge joint, if you like. Okay, so that gets super glued onto there like that. Now before you do that, it is wise to take a file and file down across that back face there, just to get rid of any inconsistencies between the parts and to give you a nice surface to actually glue to. Okay, got this wrong the first time, and so now we can just add some super glue to the back of this plate. Like so, and glue it onto the back of here. Sure we get that bottom edge aligned. So that's part 22. Now its partner, if you like, the other part, the other side of the hinge, is part 21. And once again, for the same reasons, these are 3 parts glued together with 2 30mm long this time M5 low profile bolts through these holes here. So there's 3 parts here, and it comes together like so with some super glue between. So this is part 23, and obviously that is the partner for this side here. Okay, so with those 2 parts ready, we can now bring in our base, and on the side with a hex, take an M6 hex nut and just press it in there on this side. Take this part here, and this goes in with the plate, the holes for the magnets, into here like so. And then take 4 of these 20mm long M5 low profiles, and they drive into the sides of this. And through into the block itself. Okay, so for the next step is you find part 20, which is this block here, and this is going to support our bearings on here like so. So the first step is to press home 2 30mm long M5 hex heads. Now the hex heads will look like that, they'll be 30mm long, and they get pressed into the back of this and through to come on this side. I'm using cap head bolts here, but I've changed the design now because I want the end of these to be captive. So they're going to be hex heads on your parts. So they'll press through first, and they're going to be hidden by the next part going over the top. So it's important you put those through first, like so. Now there's also a small hole on this face, and inside that hole, I don't know if you can see that, there is an 8x3 circular neodymium magnet that presses down into the bottom of that, and that's going to be the keeper for our locking mechanism that we'll get to eventually. So with part 20 prepared like so, we're ready to take this part here that we've just made, and that goes on the back of this. Now there's a cold shoe mount on the top of this piece, okay, and that goes to the top of the part. So the magnet hole here is at the bottom, and the cold shoe mount goes on the opposite end, and they come together just like so, okay. And then there are 4 holes on this side for 4 20mm M5 low profile bolts like these. I'll put those in just now. So here's the part completely assembled. Okay, with the cold shoe mount at the top and the magnet at the bottom. Put that to one side a second and look at parts 24 and 25. Okay, now these parts have 2 bearings pressed into them. On the inside here, you can see that we have a 5x16x5, and it just gets pressed in here. And on the other side, the larger hole, we have a 20x27x4, which presses in on this side. Okay, and we do that for both parts. Now, this part here has a slot in it, and this will be for our locking mechanism, which will slot in here like that. Okay, now that goes to the bottom or the magnet end of this part. So we can just press that onto here just now, and you'll see the bearing will go around this circular extension here. Press it together. Okay, like so. So there you can see the slot. Now, this part here, the actual locking mechanism, which I can't remember the part number for, but it looks like so. It has a 6 by 2.5mm magnet pressed into one side and a 30mm long M5 low profile bolt screwed in, leaving that bolt about 10mm proud, like so. And that's going to go into that hole and basically slot in. So if we put that together that way, that's going to go in, it's going to go into that hole, and it's going to catch on the magnet that's already in there, okay? So that will lock our boom from moving back and forward. So all we have left to do at this stage with this part is take two nuts, put them over here, M5 nuts, and screw them down in place. One for each of the bearings. So with this part complete, all that needs to be done now is we can add that to our fulcrum base, and that just should go on here. Like so. And then we take our locking knob, and that should just run in here. Until it locks into the M6 nut, which is pressed into the side here. And that should tighten up. Now that allows us to move freely, and then we can still lock it in place, like so. And there we have our very sturdy fulcrum. And all the weight of the system, all your camera gear and everything is coming in through this, so it has to be pretty strong. What's next?